Darren and I have gotten a lot of questions about subsurface irrigation over the last few years, so we wanted to talk about that just a little bit today.
Well, I'd say more so than questions, Brian. Even for our own farm, we're looking at it. We're in an arid climate. We've come through a couple of really dry years on our farm, and you think, wow, it would be so much nicer. I mean, we had decent yields last year for the most part, even though we were really dry. But what if we could add some moisture? And center pivot irrigations just don't fit on a lot of our ground.
Well, I don't know about that. I would say center pivot would fit on most of our ground, but the disadvantages to center pivot, number one, and you may not have even given this a lot of thought, other people, non-farmers, can see the center pivot irrigation. So let's say it is kind of a dry year, and they have restrictions in towns that, oh, I can't water, and then they drive out to the country and they see you watering. Guess who they're going to complain to? All the politicians, and pretty soon we've got another issue on the farm. If it's subsurface irrigation, then the non-farmers don't even see any of that. We keep that out of their heads.
Well, even just seeing that irrigation running in the field, people just naturally are questioning what's going on. Man, it seems like they're putting a lot of water out there. Why do they have to put so much water out there? Yet they probably drive by the golf course and don't really question why they're watering that every day.
Okay, so anyway, yes, center pivot could fit in a lot of fields, but it is nice when we can get into the corners with subsurface irrigation. The big disadvantage to subsurface irrigation is it's going to cost more money up front. However, we've got two different styles that we're looking at, even on our farm. We've got a little demonstration, so if you want to come to our summer field day, it's Thursday, July 24th. We invite you to come and take a look at this stuff that we've got going on here. Our two different styles are this. We've got subsurface drip tape set about every 60 inches roughly. We're in 30-inch rows, so basically every other row we've got subsurface drip tape. That's a pretty good way to go. You can usually get by with at least a third less water. I've talked to some farmers who've said half the water as center pivot irrigation because we don't have all that evaporation above ground. The other nice thing is you can run fertilizer through those lines too, just like you could through center pivot. Now the other style of subsurface irrigation we've got is watering through tile lines. So basically blocking our tile lines, filling them with water and allowing that water to go out. It's going to require more water, probably almost as much as what center pivot irrigation would, because we're trying to raise the water table again doing that, and the tile lines are probably only going to be every 20 feet apart as opposed to our subsurface drip tape, which is every 5 feet apart. So we got some differences there and just some things that you might take a look at and consider for your farm.
Now when we talk about irrigating through tile lines, and this is something that's a real common misconception in our industry, just with other farmers that we talk to, that any tile system we can do this with. No. If you've got tile that's out in your fields, chances are it probably won't work for just converting it into a subsurface irrigation type system. You've got to put those tile lines a lot closer together. They have to be a lot shallower in the soil profile.
Maybe 3 feet.
Yeah, they've got to be laid out specifically with subsurface irrigation in mind when they're put into the field. They will also be a very good drainage system. When you think about tile lines that are 15 or 20 feet apart, you're going to have great drainage in your field. So they don't have to be huge lines or anything like that. You do get a dual purpose. So Brian said, well, it's going to cost a lot more than putting in a center pivot right off the bat. Well, kind of, but when you compare it to putting a center pivot out and pattern tiling your field, all of a sudden now the cost says, well, hey, this isn't such a bad investment. Plus, I don't have that center pivot above ground, so I'm not worried every time there's a big windstorm coming through that it's going to blow over my center pivot or anything like that. Everything's underground and protected, and it's going to last for a long, long time.
Yeah, so we realize that center pivot is going to be cheap and simple and easy, and a lot of people are familiar with it. Well,
just cheaper
compared to these other methods. But when you take a look at the advantages to subsurface irrigation, you can understand why a lot of farmers are considering that for their operations.
There's certainly a lot of positives to be able to add water to your field when you need to help your growing crop. Another thing that can help your crop is controlling our weed 100%. We'll show you how to do that coming up next.